I don't know why people waste time on pointless debates. The latest one I've come across is TJump talking about whether God is evil. The people who proposed this subject, it's not his subject. He was invited to comment on it, and he did. And I suppose I'm basically saying, what would I have said in his place, and not to made it all seem so bad-tempered, and incoherent, and angry, and people talking quickly, and the viewer not particularly feeling enlightened and thinking it was all a waste of time, as I felt it was. Anyway, I've posted a few my comments on the video that is actually on the TJump channel. And my take on whether God is evil is that, well, he did create evil. I mean, that is the thing about, people not getting their basic theology right because they don't read the Bible. Now, the people who call for the debate seem to be mostly Muslims. So I guess we can't really expect them to have read the Bible because Muslims, so they don't really get the what's the word? The whole idea. Because what you'll find if you've kind of read both, as I have, I've read the Quran more than once in several English translations, but the Bible, I'll just confess that I haven't read all of it. But I'm aware of certain stories, such as the book of Job, and, if I haven't read the whole thing, I can, look up Bible stories. Wikipedia is very good about giving you a summary of these different books of the Bible. So you can have a pretty, quick way of learning what all these stories are about, and sounding reasonably knowledgeable about these things. So this is what I suggest if you're interested in the subject. And Job, as we all know, is this good man who enjoyed good fortune, and then God and the devil kind of did a deal with each other, and basically the devil was just saying to God, look at Job. He's got a nice life. He's enjoying himself. He's got good children, material comforts. But hey, God, Satan says, he wouldn't be praising you if you took all that away from him. He'd hate you. And so God said, well, I'll just try it out. So let's see who's right. And so God punished. Well, not punished, caused suffering. I mean, because Job hadn't done anything wrong, technically. So, and caused him great suffering. I think his children died. He had a really annoying wife who basically said, curse God and die. And there is a version of this story in the Quran, but it's all sanitized. The thing that we should know is that these Muslims will be saying, oh, the Old Testament, such a terrible job, such a terrible book. It's sex and violence and pornography, and really not suitable for the eyes of good Muslim people, let alone their children. It's a terrible book. The Quran is more sanitized, but unfortunately, because it's so sanitized, the best stories are in the Old Testament. So as we all probably have guessed, Job regained his good fortune because he did not curse God and die. He kept his faith and was eventually rewarded. And the takeaway point from this is that we're all going to suffer, and God never promised us a rose garden. So the fact that we suffer and see great injustice in the world is not conclusive evidence that God doesn't exist. It's only conclusive evidence that we don't understand the nature of the bargain, or we seem to think that we are already in heaven, and if things are not to our liking, we can complain to the management, which is to totally misunderstand the nature of the bargain, which is that this life is a test for our fitness to go to the good place in the next life. And so we have to ask ourselves, is God good or evil? And the narrative, as you may have already have guessed from the Jewish belief of God, I mean, just forget the Christian belief. It's so ridiculous. Just completely dump it. Because really, the whole point of worshipping a deity is to worship the most powerful being conceivable. If there's a range of gods, you're going to worship the most powerful one. Otherwise, you're just stupid and you do deserve to suffer. Because if you're so stupid that you can't understand that if you have a range of gods to choose from, you choose from the most powerful one, right? Really, I mean, it's a no-brainer, unless you're stupid, and you already suffer anyway if you're stupid. Now, what about, so really, there are five world religions, the 3 Abrahamic faiths. Forget the other two Eastern religions. Just forget the other two, because they haven't accomplished anything much, have they? India is a fallen civilization, and the Chinese disdain to attribute any success of their civilization to Buddhism. The very idea, as if believing in Buddhism is going to get you as far as it got China. It's just ridiculous. So forget Buddhism, forget Hinduism. The only religions worth considering would be the 3 Abrahamic faiths. And it's so easy. It's so easy. You're not Jewish, so don't bother becoming Jewish, because if you were to become Jewish, you'd be subjecting yourself to all these restrictions, your dietary, the punishment for anything for Jews is much harsher. There are 36 capital offenses in the Torah if you're Jewish. So why you would want to become Jewish and stop yourself from eating pork and shellfish and have to observe the Sabbath under pain of death? Why would you do that? It wouldn't make sense, because as a Gentile, you have the option of two religions to choose from: Christianity and Islam. And Islam gets you to heaven, which it describes most seductively in the Quran. So here we are. I think you already agreed that if you're going to choose a deity to worship, you would choose the most powerful deity. And if there are more than one way of worshipping the deity, you would want to find, if you're being rational, the easiest way of getting to heaven. So already Islam beats Christianity hands down, because it's heaven is seductively described in the Quran with gardens with running water, nice things to eat and drink, beautiful young men and women to bring your food to you, brocade cushions to recline on, nice clothes to wear. So it sounds quite a nice, consumerist, seductive heaven. And what does the New Testament say? It talks about singing the praises of God for all eternity. So that's where you get all these ideas of playing a harp on a cloud. That would be the Christian idea of heaven, which just wouldn't be sufficient for the hedonists based on sex and drugs and rock and roll. Just wouldn't be, it wouldn't do. So already the afterlife described in the Quran already beats the New Testament. And the other thing is that you would want more this life benefits for adhering to it than you would choose a religion with more this life benefits. So, obviously you would like to think that if you adopted this religion, your status would rise, you would become more successful, if you adopted the laws of the Quran, your society would enjoy lower crime, more stable marriages and families, lower taxes, that kind of thing. And we already have this in the Quran. If I explained it to you so many times, because there are laws in the Quran that says 20% flat rate income tax, capital and corporal punishment will be the order of the day. Unmarried parents will be shamed, and this will restore the patriarchy, and that will restore good moral order to your society, even if you are as far gone as the Globo Homo West. Okay, and then the other thing is the theology of the whole thing. So we know that God, if he exists, has forbidden idolatry and blasphemy in the 10 Commandments. And, there's just a slight question mark on Christianity, because, there are all these idols of Jesus and Mary in all these churches. They look like idols, and Christians have been bowing before them for 2,000 years. And they're also told to worship Jesus as a co-equal of God in the doctrine of the Trinity. So it's looking pretty suspicious that Christians are guilty of idolatry and blasphemy, plus the fact that Jesus, according to Christian account, according to the Christian narrative in Matthew, is known to have been convicted of blasphemy when he said his papa was God. So it's really not looking very good for Christians. So on the question of whether God is good or evil, we already know from Isaiah chapter 45, verse 17, I think it is, that God created good and evil. So we already know. It says so in the Bible that God created good and evil. So that's why this question, this pointless debate that went on for 2 hours, is so ridiculous. And it was called by these Muslims apparently, who didn't know. They didn't know about Isaiah chapter 45, verse 17. And what's saddening is that there are so many urgent questions that need to be discussed, and you get all these young men discussing pointless, stupid things that don't go anywhere, and that's what they do, I guess, to stay out of trouble with YouTube, I guess. Why do they discuss these sort of dumb, pointless questions? It's like, haven't they got anything better to do? Why don't they discuss well, just anything that people might care about, you know. It's very strange. I guess it's some kind of displacement therapy with these sort of frightened young men who, don't want their YouTube channels given a strike for discussing anything that they might want to discuss, that anybody else might care about. And when you think, you get a strike, and well, is that your life gone? But I guess for atheists and, degenerates and, stupid, scared young men who don't want to discuss anything that's important, they'll just have to discuss these pointless, stupid questions, non-questions even. So it's very sad, and it's not looking too good for Western civilization. Even Muslims, they just want to discuss pointless, stupid things, and well, I guess that's just the way it is. People are getting stupider. Even these Muslims who are supposed to be so energetic and full of belief and whatever, but they want to discuss dumb questions like whether God is evil. And my answer to that is, well, we already know, according to the narrative, the biblical narrative in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 17, that God creates evil. Now, why would he create evil? To test us, obviously, because that's the narrative. He creates good and he creates evil to test us in this examination hall that is this life. But these Muslims who call the debate, I guess they don't get it. Not many people get a whole bunch of things these days, so they spend 2 hours talking to TJump about whether God is evil or not. And what do they talk about? Something about God playing Xbox and increasing or decreasing the degree of difficulty. Just really dumb things like that. And I can't even find their names because I would want to list their names. So I don't know. I can't. I think it's from the Thought Adventure podcast. But yeah, look at all these men discussing pointless things for 2 hours. Well, as long as they get super chats or whatever. But really, just dumb and dumber. So finally, one intelligent comment, semi-intelligent comment from Vi. Why do you call yourself a girl's name, Vi? Of course I know that the narrative is that the Abrahamic God decides what is good and evil. And he basically gives us laws to obey, saying, telling us to obey these laws, and we can best access what he wants us to do or not to do by remembering the 7 Noahide laws, or even the 7 deadly sins. So that's the quickest way to know what the Abrahamic God wants us to believe in and do. Talking about how to choose a religion. If you're going to choose one, A, you choose the most powerful deity conceivable. and that must be the Abrahamic God, and then you want to choose one with. I mean, it depends on what you want. I mean, if you may choose a religion, even if you don't believe in God, you see, because you want this life benefits, because you think, well, if most people believed in God, then they would do the right thing, and then problems would be solved quickly and easily, and so you want people to believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished, and that's why you encourage people to believe in God. And that would be my reason. And of course, people like the idea of going to heaven after they are dead. So that's a third reason, quite understandable and really quite compelling reasons. And then finally, the question about, well, which religion should we choose? And obviously, we would have to choose a religion with a clearer scripture and one that applies to us. So there's no point choosing the Torah because it's not meant for us if we're Gentiles, right? It's only for Jews, and we look at Jews, and most of them are not observant Jews, so they're not even following their own religion. So we can deduce that they're not following it because A, they don't believe in it, B, it's too hard for them to follow, and that's why they don't follow it. And so we might want to give that a miss if we're Gentiles. And then this leaves us with two Gentile religions, Christianity and Islam. And we see that the West is as Christian as a human skeleton used to be human. So what we see around us, if we live in the West, we see churches. Of course, we see churches, and occasionally we see vicars in dog collars and activity in churches too. But that doesn't really mean anything, because what we see are artifacts and people moving around in these Christian artifacts. Because for religion, it's about imposing a belief system, and I don't think that even the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury actually believe that Jesus is God. When did they stop believing? I believe they stopped believing the moment the American Republic was established. So that was quite a few hundred years ago, 1796. That was Westerners rejecting monarchy, rejecting Christianity. And then a few years later, is it 1776? When was the American Revolution? I'm afraid I'm a bit vague about it. It's 1798 for the French Revolution, right? And I think it's 1776. So, and again, the Frenchies rejected monarchy and Christianity again. So you can see that when the Europeans were grown up enough to think about these things, they rejected it. They rejected Christianity because they hated the way it was imposed on them by their monarch. Because in the olden days, your religion was whatever your monarch's religion was, because you're the subject of your monarch, and the monarch's word goes. And if the monarch says you have to be Christian and you refuse to be Christian, you'd be burnt at the stake. And because of the horrible, burnt and bloody history of Christianity that unfortunately Europeans haven't actually begun to acknowledge, they're in a bit of a pickle over this. Why haven't they acknowledged the burnt and bloody history of Christianity? because I suppose the government would be a little nervous of saying, well, Christianity is rubbish, idolatry, blasphemy, hateful, absurd. So they didn't say that because, well, it's just one of those things, really. You don't want to you want to let sleeping dogs lie, right? If you wake them up, they might, I don't know, what will they do? They want to go for a walk and, and maybe you don't fancy it. So you let sleeping dogs lie and then your religion dies. Yes, there are plenty of beautiful churches in Europe, but I think the Victorians built beautiful churches because they had lots of money, and I suppose they thought they were glorifying God. But they didn't really believe, because it was in Victorian times that the Doctrine of the Trinity Act 1813 was passed, and that meant that you could deny the divinity of Jesus and not be guilty of blasphemy, and still get to university, because cancel culture was such that if you weren't Anglican, you weren't going to get into university. So there was a lot of discrimination amongst white Christian people against other white Christian people. And it continued in America. The First Amendment was a way of dealing with all these Christians, these white Christian people in America coming from Europe, fighting each other, even in the New World. So Jefferson thought he'd put an end to it by passing the First Amendment. That was originally the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, and that was based on the First Amendment. Chapter 2, verse 256. The First Amendment was based on Chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran. So there you go. The clues are everywhere. There's a trail of information and events that already tell you that Christianity was getting kaput a long time ago. So what Westerners are most proud of is their religious freedom, their freedom of expression, their freedom of worship. And it came from the American Republic and eventually got back to the old world. And what does this mean for us? Well, if you look upon these events, we are living in how shall I call it? Living history. We are living history. What we live through now will be called history in generations to come. But the clues are pretty clear, aren't they? That things are developing. History doesn't come to a stop. Christianity is not the most powerful religion in the world because it's coming down, because the West is coming down. And why is it coming down in the world? It's because they've been ignoring marriage and family values for about half a century. And that's why its politicians are so corrupt and incompetent, and nothing is fit for purpose. So that is a problem. And you might well ask yourself why God, if he exists and disapproves of idolatry and blasphemy, why did he allow 3 global Christian empires to rise? And the answer must be, he always gives us the rope with which to hang ourselves. Because according to the Jewish belief, the Jewish conception of Satan, Satan works hand in glove with God. He is believed by Jews to be the prosecuting counsel of God. And this means that God did create good and evil, and he logically and necessarily has to create evil in order for us to know good, because we won't even understand the concept of good if we didn't know or if we haven't experienced evil or even conceive of it. But the conception of God is that it is necessary for evil to exist so that we may know good. And I think because we live in a logical universe, we can understand why it must be so. So if we have any sense of moral reasoning, we would be able to, well, you would be able to see the world as I do and agree with me on what needs to be done about solving our problems, our social, economic, and political problems. And I think it's all to do with our belief systems. So it is my belief that we have a moral imperative to behave as if we believed in God and obey his laws, even if we doubt his existence. That is basically my philosophical proposition. And I invite anyone to disagree with me on this, particularly if they are supposedly learned individuals, public intellectuals. That would be the most important proposition. And once that point is agreed, then secular Koranism will follow. So what I would like is somebody capable of debating these questions with me. Or, well, if you just want to agree with me, you're very welcome to do so. So to sum up, the question on whether God is evil is misconceived. We already know, if we know our Bible, that God created good and evil, and it will appear in our lifetimes that good people suffer evil and evil people lead good lives. And in the face of this, we are to ask ourselves whether God really exists or doesn't. And but the system, this belief system still works if you believe in an afterlife in which good will be rewarded and evil punished. So you will get this perfectly moral God giving us perfect justice in this life or the next. But what cannot be doubted is that if we obeyed God's laws, we would get a more just society. And if we believed in God's existence, we would be more likely to obey better God's laws. And we would more quickly solve our problems. So my current obstacle is that I can't get these rabbis to engage with me. They know what I'm all about. I know these Christians flee from me because I know I'm gunning for their Trinity, and I know the rabbis run from me, these Orthodox rabbis run from me because they know I'm going to be asking them whether Jews were made God's chosen people to properly teach the Noahide laws, and if so, have Jews been properly teaching the Noahide laws? And we know the answer is no. These rabbis won't even rank the 4 Gentile religions. So the answer is no, 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 no. So if God exists, then he would be a little disappointed with his chosen people who are not fit to teach properly the Noahide laws. And then comes the Quran that says God will not burden a people with more than burden a soul with more than it can bear. And I'm sure he includes Jewish souls and their intolerable burden of teaching the Noahide laws that they haven't been doing for 2,000 years. We know they haven't been doing it because Christianity has been going for 2,000 years. So Jews are not fit for the purpose of teaching the Noahide laws, and that's why they can't challenge the idolatry and blasphemy of Christianity. But what about the Muslims? So these Muslims who invited TJump, it's like, what are they doing? They could be talking about secular Koranism, but they choose to have a completely pointless 2-hour discussion with TJump about whether God is evil. Why do they do that? Cowardice, I suppose. I can't think of any other reason apart from cowardice. I mean, obviously the hottest topic ought to be secular Koranism for Muslims, but they have to talk about whether God is evil and spend 2 hours talking about it with TJump, who talked about God playing Xbox. I mean, what a total utter waste of time. But I guess they're all running away from talking about secular Koranism or the fitness of Jews to be teaching the Noahide laws and whether Christianity is idolatry and blasphemy. It's sad. All these people who are supposed to have faith in God, and they're just, what are they doing? They're just wasting time, marking time, treading water, afraid to get a strike on their channel. These brave Muslim young men whose names I can't even read, or I would read out their names. I wonder if they've heard of secular Koranism. I mean, does it mean that mentioning it will get your channel a strike? Is that what they're afraid of? When you think of all these degenerates, afraid to get a strike, so they say nothing. Compared to what their ancestors had to do, they had to fight wars, cross oceans, but these pathetic young men who waste 2 hours of their life discussing nothing so they can keep their useless channels that say nothing anyway. So to finish, I'll just remind myself of the title. So the Ventiel who now calls himself a Muslim, I thought a few months ago you were calling yourself agnostic, now you're calling yourself Muslim, and now you're saying again, because you don't quite get it, that secular Koranism cannot be kaput unless it's been tried and failed. But you're just defending the cowardice of your fellow Muslims. I think you would hate for me to succeed where you are all too cowardly to discuss important, relevant theological matters. I see the corruption in all of you, really. Imagine if I succeeded and all these brave Muslim young men just couldn't even get their dawah done, couldn't even get together to tell me why I'm so wrong and why they're so right, when they're just wasting time talking to people like TJump, asking themselves if God is evil because they're too ignorant or lazy to have read or even heard of the book of Job. So the vet expects me to succeed already when the available material is so poor. He expects me to build a ship when all I get is damp, rotten wood. And what does he expect me to do? He wants me to give up like him and just pray to God for salvation. I think that's his idea, isn't it? This is what Christians do, especially the ones who insist they're Christian and then they say they never go to church. Yes, thank you, Judas. Particularly Muslims, Muslims asking an atheist, it's like they've run out of things to discuss, have they all? They're just afraid to discuss the important things that they need to be discussing, like secular Koranism. I don't even mind if they said it was rubbish. I mean, it would be something. But I guess they don't want to engage with me because, in case, I don't know, I would actually regard it as a sign of success if you say the word secular Koranism and your channel goes down. I would regard it as a sign of success. But all right, I've said enough. I have other things to do. And I'll talk to you another time, I hope. I've made my point clear.